Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Rentz here, host of the Raiders Report, and coming up on today's show, we got an updated Raiders 53-man roster projection during Raiders mandatory minicamp. OTAs just finished up last week, and I like to do this show multiple times in the offseason just to kind of give you guys a little bit of a mindset of where I'm thinking this organization's at, where I think that this team is at. I did a 53-man projection at the end of the NFL draft, so if you want to go back and kind of check how these compare, because I'm going to say I have 5 different players on this one than compared to when I had it back in after the draft. So as it stands right now, the Las Vegas Raiders have 91 players on their roster. They're allowed to carry 91 dudes because of the International Pathway Program player David Ogoa, which means from now until the season starts, until they kick off week 1 against the Chargers, give me an FLAC, means we got to get this team down to 53 players. So that's what I'm going to try to do today. Today, I am going to do my best job if I were to sit down with Antonio Pierce, sit down with Tom Telesco, and figure out what they would do if I also had a say of that 53-man. Now, if you're looking for free Raiders videos every single day in the offseason, I want you to hit that subscribe button. If you want to help me take down our 49ers report in our June sub battle, hit that subscribe button. If you just want to hang out with the nation because you like having a good time and it's family around here, hit that subscribe button. Also, do me a huge favor and turn on those notifications. I got to give a shout out to our Noti gang. Cherry44, Jaime, the king of the Noti gang. We got Oscar, Cali Raider. And then Carly's Kruger has been popping up yet again. Shout out to the Noti gang. If you don't know what it is, it means you got those notifications turned on and you try to be one of the very first people down in the comment section. So the way that we're going to do this 53-man projection is we're going to start with quarterback, and then we're going to work our way all the way down to special teams. I will say the number that you see next to the players is the number of me just simply counting out the 53-man. So that way you can see how many players we're at, the number that we're at, and it's just, I've done this show so many times that in my mind, it's kind of the easiest way for me to go through a 53. I'll also say this, if you've never done your own 53-man, you should 100% do it. It's very challenging, and I'm always curious to see of where you decide to go with your roster with some of these extra spots. So first, let's look at the quarterback room here. We got 4 guys on this team: Gardner Minshew, Aidan O'Connell, Anthony Brown Jr., and then the UDFA Carter Bradley. The last time I did this, I went with the 3 players that were pictured. And here's the thing. I went with something a little bit different this time, just based off of the reports that we've seen from OTAs and just the way that I think that the Luke Getsy offense is being created. I do think that a quarterback like a Carter Bradley probably fits a little bit closer to that mold of Aidan the Gardner Minshew. So because of that reasoning and because of his background knowledge of defenses, for those that don't know, his dad, Gus Bradley, former Raiders defensive coordinator, 3 QBs, these are the 3 that I'm going to keep. Let's go to the running back position. This one was a very, very difficult one, and my guy Graff is probably going to be a little bit upset with the decision that I had to go with, but, I had to go with some tough decisions in the 53, and it's kind of a good thing. It just means that the team's getting a little bit better. Obviously, I ended up keeping Zamir White. The Raiders, they signed Alexander Mattison this offseason, but just because they signed a player does not make them a lock to make this team. With that being said, I do see the Raiders keeping 4 running backs, and I did not like the gut feeling that I have keeping only 4 backs. I just don't feel like it's enough depth. I feel like that this is something might be a little bit missing in this, but you got 2 solid backs in White and Alexander Mattison between the tackles, and then you got 2 special teams guys that can also catch the football here. It just opens up an avenue for you to keep a few other positions that I do think are a little bit more important, and I think it also helps out for special teams. You've heard the Raiders talk so much about special teams, which we'll get to here in a little bit. How about this, though? I'm going to make this the pinned comment on today's show. I usually ask this a lot more when I'm live because I like to see who's watching our live shows and who's rocking with me. How about this? I know a lot of people can't watch this show live. I know that the nation is everywhere, and I love seeing the heck. I saw a Raider fan during my buddy's bachelor party up in the Poconos. The nation spreads far and wide. Shout out your area code down below. I grew up in the 570. I'm guessing Raider 831 is from the 831. Let me know where your area code is. Shout out to the nation. Let's go to the wide receiver position group now, and I'm just going to say this. I'm putting Brock Bowers in the tight ends group. where last time I put him in wide receiver, I did it for a graphic reason, which probably doesn't mean all that much to y'all. But you're not going to see Brock Bowers here. Don't panic. He did end up making the team. Raiders have a really solid wide receiver group. You got Davante, you got Jakobi, you got a lot of guys with some experience. After that, though, there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of no names, and there's going to be a name on this list that I do think takes people by surprise, and that name is DJ Turner. And I couldn't even believe myself that I put Turner on this list, and the fact that I picked Turner over a guy like Sincere McCormick simply just illustrates that Turner gives you some of that flexibility on special teams. Raiders special teams coordinator literally less than 2 weeks ago said that he loves DJ Turner. And because of these new kickoff rules, I am really genuinely curious if the Raiders, who have a lot of turnover this year, what if they decide to stick with something with McMahon, DJ Turner, and let him maybe be a gunner, maybe be in a kick returner, especially if you're going to carry 4 running backs on your team. Let's go to the tight end group here now, which is where you're going to see Brock Bowers. There's a part of me that's flirting with the idea of keeping an extra tight end because of the 12 personnel that, you know, Bowers to me is going to be playing in the slot, which that means he's also going to line up at tight end. You know that Michael Mayer is going to make the team. You know that Harrison Bryant's going to keep the team. But, like, are they going to keep an extra tight end? I battled. I thought about it. I don't think they're going to keep following him or Samuel Schnenker. And I just decided this time to leave Zach Gentry off. Like, I battled with it. This was another one that I'm very confident in the 3 tight ends that you see up on screen. But just because I believe we are going to do so much 2 tight end sets and rely on the tight end room, if one of these guys were to go down, you'd be in a little bit of a pickle. But I decided to keep 3. Let's now go to the offensive line. The last time that I did a Raiders 53-man projection for the offensive line, I kept only 8 linemen. Due to some of the injury concerns that we have had already this offseason around a Jackson Powers-Johnson, around a Kolton Miller, I had to say we need another player. If you got a quarterback like Gardner, Aidan O'Connell, this team needs to have a solid offensive line at all points. And you need to be able to have the depth that really helps you propel forward and be that dominator on the interior. For the Raiders, I'm going to keep the 5 guys that are pictured, which, again, not going to surprise anybody. Your third rounder, Delmar Glaze. Cody Whitehair gives you a little bit of that flexibility. I think he was legitimately signed to be that backup center if need be. Andrus Peat, back up to Kolton Miller. And then Jordan Meredith is this other fringe player, if you will, on the O-line. But as it stands, 53 players, I am keeping only 24 on offense. And the reason why I'm keeping less players on offense is because, to me, the players on defense are just better. And I had to make some tough cuts. But again, I'm going to keep the players that I think make our top 53 guys, the best 53 overall team. That's what I tried to build. So Father's Day, y'all, it's right around the corner, and I got to know, is your dad a Raiders fan? Give me a yes, give me a no. I'll be real. My dad, not a Raider fan. But you know what? He does support me, and he does rock a lot of Raiders gear, believe it or not. Jim Otto's his favorite player. But you know what, man? You don't want to be the dude that forgets about the opportunity to get your dad something. If you're a dad watching the show, and, I don't know, your son's a dad. I'm a dog dad. Hey, best dad ever. Chatsports.com/RaidersDad. This link's going to be available to you all down in the comments and in the description of today's show. And quite frankly, it's probably your last opportunity. The Father's Day sale usually ends right before Father's Day, but I'm also probably not going to be talking about it anymore because if you're buying a Father's Day gift on Friday, you're probably a little bit late to the party. I think that you can get, there's coffee mugs, there's wine stuff, there's beer, things for pictures, whether you're wearing it, whether you're trying to create a lasting memory. Shopping for dad is tough. I get it. And he's also going to tell you that he doesn't need anything. But hey, it's always nice to get something. Chatsports.com/RaidersDad. Let's now go to the defensive side of the football here where, again, I had to make some tough cuts, right? You're just always going to have to make tough decisions. But I did decide to go with a little bit of a different route with the defensive ends because last time I kept only 4. This time, I'm going to keep 5. And when you look at the players that are featured here, Tyree Wilson is one of those dudes. Maxx Crosby, Malcolm Koonce, Tyree Wilson, that's the easy list of names. After that, though, if I told you I'm keeping 2 more players, I do think that you would scratch your head. And some of you might be like, oh, it's David Ogoa. David Ogoa is on this team because he is part of that international pathway program. So he's one of the 91 guys. He's technically one of the 54 players that end up making this team. but he's not a part of the 53-man roster because he doesn't have to be. So, with that being said, I'm still going to keep Janarius Robinson. At this point, if they didn't cut him yet, just tells me that they're probably not going to do it. But I am going to be adding in a UDFA, and last offseason, I fell in love with Adam Plant Jr. Maybe I'm just falling in love with the juniors. Probably can't even say that thing out loud. That's one of the ultimate bosses I've ever said on this show. But for Ron Stone, he got $170,000. I know, right? That one's brutal. He got $170,000 of guaranteed money to sign as a UDFA. Been a lot of reports out there that he just continues to impress at practice. And I know how thin this team is at defensive end. Ron Stone is the UDFA right now that I think all of y'all should keep your eyes on, not just the juniors. Let's go to defensive tackle now here for this one. And Christian Wilkins is a stud. Adam Butler, John Jenkins, you brought those guys back. Though there are a lot of question marks around a guy like a Byron Young, Nesta, Jade, Silvera. Raiders re-signed Marquand McCall this offseason. Matthew Butler, he missed practice for mandatory minicamp on Tuesday. So, this team could go in a lot of different directions. I also know that with Patrick Graham, they are going to rely heavily on this defensive line. Rob Leonard has kind of spoke about this in great lengths as well. I am going to end up keeping 6 defensive tackles. I will say, though, the guy that just continuously I don't know is Nesta Jade. I'm also kind of curious, though, with Matthew Butler, him unable to practice for that first day of mandatory minicamp, one of only 3 players unable to do so. Byron Young got some compliments from some of the Raiders coaching staff, also got compliments from Rob Leonard, the Raiders defensive line coach. When a player like Matthew Butler randomly stops practicing, he was able to practice at times during OTAs, it does make me wonder if the Raiders are shopping him. Not saying they are, just something to keep in mind. Let's go to linebacker here. It's the next position for our Raiders 53-man roster projections. And, you're getting down there to the nitty-gritty. I know that Tom McMahon, the Raiders special teams coach, said that linebacker could be a spot that they decide to keep a few extra players on due to special teams. And I really, really thought about this one. However, I wanted to be able to keep a few extra players on some other spots. So I actually only ended up keeping 4 linebackers. Robert Spillane, Divine Diablo, Tommy Eichenberg, who they drafted in the 5th round, and then Amari Burney, who is going to be a good player this year for the Raiders from a special team standpoint. Luke Masterson, when Antonio Pierce took over, his special team snaps continue to go down and down and down. And the only reason that I would have kept Masterson on this team is for that extra special teams ability. And because they've already showed you last year that his snaps went down, that's why Masterson unfortunately did not make this roster. So what do you think about this? If you think that the Raiders are going to have more than 6.5 wins because Vegas thinks that the Raiders are going to have 6.5 wins, I want you to click the like button on this video right now. I was watching the Raiders live show on Tuesday, and it took 30 minutes for Crosby to take the podium, and I'm sitting there watching, and, you get a bunch of guys that watch this show, other shows, and there was a debate of how many games the Raiders were going to win, and it basically looked like everybody was picking 6.5, so I said, all right, you know what? Put your money where your mouth is. Click that like button if this team is winning more than 6.5 games, because I definitely think so. Let's go to the cornerback position, and this was another spot that I'm like, we need another guy. And we talk about free agents a lot. Stephon Gilmore, Xavier Howard, Steven Nelson ended up retiring. Adoree Jackson is a name that we've thrown out there. I'm going to show you the corners that I've ended up keeping, and you're going to look at it and go, oh, I don't love it. There's some upside there, but you are going to sit there and you're going to be like, I just don't love it. We need to add an extra guy. I'll tell you who I ended up keeping and which corners I ended up hanging around here on this roster. Before I do, though, if you want to tune in live when we go break down our Madden games, Week 6, Week 7, I am doing this week, June 13th, Thursday, June 14th, Friday. Hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications. We get wet and wild on the Raiders Report for game day. Guess what? We do the exact same thing for our Madden sim. So if you want to pay attention all season long, take a screenshot, put it down in your calendar. I promise you, we're not boring here in the offseason. We have a lot of fun on these Madden things. Some people might say too much fun. So the Raiders cornerback group, Jack Jones, Nate Hobbs, both are going to make this team. Besides that, I could make an argument of why each player that you see featured could at least potentially make it. Now, the one name that was kind of hard for me is Armstrong, because the way that the Raiders have described the cornerbacks that they want for special teams is literally how they describe Armstrong, long, lanky guy. I'm going to end up keeping, though, 6 corners as it stands right now. Brandon Facyon's the name that I ended up keeping, where last time I did this, I ended up cutting him because I thought the Raiders would use the money that you could save from cutting Facyson. If you were to cut Facyson, you'd save $2.6 million, and I had the Raiders keeping Sam Webb. I'm a Sam Webb believer, though new regime, maybe they're not going to be as high on him. I think all the other names, nobody's really going to disagree with me, but this team needs to add another freaking player. Let's go to safety. It's the next and final position. We'll get into the special teams guys here, though, in just a moment. But safety is another spot that this is good depth, right? Like, if I'm a safety on this team and I don't make it, I don't really take it personal. I'm just on a very deep and good safety group. Merrigan Epps, they're locks to make it. The Raiders drafted Tre Taylor, 7th rounder, which not every time if you take somebody in the 7th round, it means that they're a lock to make it. I do in this situation think that he is going to be a lock to make this team. He's already been impressive. Isaiah Polameo is another name, and then the next one is going to be Chris Smith. So I'm keeping 5 safeties on this team. And a lot of versatility here. You can go in a bunch of different directions. Like, say that again? Semi-linebacker, I think is another way that the Raiders could do it. Like, they try to take Isaiah Polameo, make him a safety linebacker hybrid. And you've even seen some NFL teams try to do it with a safety like a Divine Diablo in college, convert him to a linebacker. I'm starting to wonder if you're going to maybe even see some linebackers maybe try to get converted to some safeties just to be a little bit more flexible, be able to handle some more of the dime packages, if you will, in the NFL. Finally, let's round it out. Maybe this is where we're the strongest. Daniel Carlson, place kicker. A.J. Cole at punt, which if you guys haven't seen the shot A.J. Cole made last weekend, dude drained a 3 from like half court at an Aces game. It's pretty well, not an Aces game, but basically at the Aces facility. And then Jacob Moyer at long snapper. That's my Raiders 53-man roster projection. Now, here's what I know. I left somebody off my list. I'm going to see somebody that could agree with 52 out of the 53 players that I did. But somebody's going to tell me how bad of a video it is because I left off one guy. Here you go. Tell me how bad I am at my job. Let me know. Who did I leave off my Raiders 53-man roster? Because the 5 players that I thought were the hardest for me to cut, just based on, team fit, all these different things, were these 5 players here. Anthony Brown. He very well could make the team. I actually think that it's probably an unpopular opinion, me putting Carter Bradley above Anthony Brown. Jalen Guyton was signed this offseason. The wide receiver depth, the fact that a guy like Jack Jones has taken snaps at receiver at practice during first day of minicamp makes me a little bit concerned about their depth there at wide receiver. Zach Gentry, because a lot of 12 personnel. Sam Webb, to me, he's good enough to be on this team if our team is what it is right now. Different regime, though, so maybe. And then Luke Masterson, it's a player that I think when he's gotten opportunities, he actually has looked okay. I would keep him if I needed that extra linebacker, and I would probably cut somebody else like a DJ Turner personally. But these were the 5 players that I thought just missed the cut for my personal Raiders 53-man roster. Now, again, y'all, if you haven't yet, make sure you're tuning in to all of our live shows on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. And do not miss our Madden simulation. It's a big game. Week 6. Live on the Raiders Report Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific.